Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Bleav.
Welcome back to the Jello Jiggling podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ward, and I got a special guest today, Mr. Bruce Bernstein. Long time sports enthusiast, and worked for ESPN for a very long time, didn't you?
Yeah, I was there for a total of 32 years.
Nice. But you had a lot of experiences with the Lakers during your time at ESPN, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my experiences with the Lakers started, believe it or not, when I was about 12 years old in my hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts, when I was exposed to my very first Laker legend, Jerry West. And I'm happy to tell you that story if you're interested.
Yeah, well, I mean, perfect timing with the Lakers announcing that they're going to honor him this season with the patch, and then opening night they're going to do some celebration or ceremony. So yeah, shoot, man.
All right. So anyway, my mom used to go shopping at this shopping mall in my hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts, which is about a half hour south of Boston. So one day we're in the mall and she's doing her thing, and I used to go to this kind of store called Bradley's, okay, which is sort of a mini version of like Walmart is now. It's like a department store. So, she'd be around shopping and I'd go there. I'd say, Mom, I'll be looking at the sporting goods in Bradley's. So, whatever, tell me what time to meet you. So I walk into the sporting goods store one day. Now I'm about 12 years old. So I'm going to say this is like 1969. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I walk into Bradley's, and sitting in like one of those metal folding chairs, like, if you go to a bingo game at the church, those metal folding chairs, sitting there all by himself was Jerry West, okay, in Brockton, Massachusetts, of all places. And he was sitting there with a stack of like these photos. And I'm going to actually go off camera for a second. I'm going to grab it and show you. Hang on.
Okay.
He's sitting there with a stack of photos, all right? Now, this is the photo, all right? He actually signed it down here, all right?
Yeah, uh-huh.
And he's just sitting there, and that's the famous logo pose, right? He's just sitting there, and I remember this so vividly. I just looked at him. I couldn't even talk, right? I'm a 12-year-old kid. I couldn't even talk. It's Jerry freaking West sitting in Bradley's in Brockton. So he just grabs one of the things, signs it. There was nobody around him. There was no one from the store. There was no one from the sporting goods company, which was Regent Sporting Goods. There was nobody. It was Jerry West sitting there. And I swear to God, I'm not tripping. This really happened because I still have the picture. So I was like, that was my first experience with a Laker. And it's funny. Later on, about 4 years ago, when I was with my previous company called Pure Hoops Media, we did a podcast with Jerry, because one of my podcasters was a former Lakers assistant coach and former Clippers general manager by the name of Dave Wohl. I don't know if you remember Dave. He actually played. He was assistant coach. He was on Riley's Showtime staff. I think he got a ring in '85. Then he coached the Nets and, whatever. So we had Jerry on. And before we started the show, I told him that story because I was just curious. I didn't expect him to remember it. I mean, look, it was 50 whatever years ago. And I asked him, do you remember this? He said, nope, I was never there. And I'm like, well, yes, I didn't say this to him. I said, yeah, you were. But that's a memory. I mean, that's like, 55 years ago, Ryan. I mean, but that was my first exposure to a Laker legend. And I still got the picture. I got the receipts.
So that's around the time where they're still like kind of promoting the NBA, right? And he's like one of the poster boys. So they're doing like the rounds and stuff like that.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, look, back then, those guys didn't really get paid all that much money. So I'm sure any endorsements, I mean, look, they had to be in Boston to play the Celtics, maybe the next night or the day before or whatever, which is the only reason I could imagine Jerry West would have been in Bradley's.
So he was already in a bad mood.
Really, right?
Yeah.
Hey, look, he had some tough games against the Celtics, but Jerry West is just, I mean, I have such admiration for him. It was such a blow when we lost him, earlier in the year. Because the podcast that we did with him, with Dave Wohl, which was called Dave's Front Office, if anyone really wants to search for it on Apple's podcasts, you can still find it. It's still up there. Just a remarkable guy. I mean, just in so many ways. And I remember he was talking about Elgin Baylor, because Elgin was very, very sick at the time. He hadn't passed away yet. And Dave asked him about Elgin. And the words that he used to describe Elgin were just so heartfelt. And he truly, truly loved Elgin. They were way beyond friends. I mean, they were like family.
A lot of tough battles together, those two, before Will came along, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the very, by the time I started following basketball, which was around 1966, Elgin was still kind of in his prime in 66, but we didn't get games on TV back then.
Yeah.
If you were lucky, you got a weekend game on ABC, but it wasn't like now where, there's stuff up on the satellite, there's cable TV. There was none of that stuff. So the only time we saw him was like kind of on film. And now looking back on it, I mean, you see some of the things that he used to be able to do. And he truly was. I mean, Elgin Baylor was like, he was playing above the rim when the only people playing above the rim was like Wilt or Bill Russell or, the
big
7-footers.
Right? Yeah. I was going to say, didn't they, at least from a documentary I saw, like they called him like the first real NBA superstar, right? Because he could do literally everything on the court. I mean, didn't one year he averaged like a crazy amount of rebounds on top of all his scoring?
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking like 14, 15 rebounds a game, something nuts.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that and just being like, whoa, this guy must have been everywhere on the basketball court,
I'm actually old enough to remember when Dr. J, Julius Erving, kind of came into prominence. And I remember hearing at the time, oh yeah, he's like the closest thing to Elgin Baylor. So, because, with just kind of this elegant controlling the ball with one hand and doing this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just, again, way, a true, pioneer in that particular style of basketball.
Yeah. Talk about a cool guy. I got to interview Dr. J, I think maybe about 6 years ago, because he joined forces with the Big Three. He was a coach on the sideline or whatever. And the PR person told me I get like 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh, man. They force it in there and you just got to like go running off questions like, and it sucks usually most of the time. They just want to get it over with.
Right.
I talked to him for 45 minutes.
Wow.
And he was just so cool. Like we went into like this whole thing on Barkley, his time in Philly. I think we talked about Jordan, Kobe. I mean, we just kept going and going and going and going. I was like, man, what a laid back dude. Like I love retired players, like interviewing retired players because they have no filter for one, right? Because Byron Scott, who right? He was another guy. I interviewed him and I covered him when he coached the Lakers before he got fired. But and he was super like, arms crossed all the time, like basically don't talk to me, right? Gave off this vibe of just like, you know what? I hate the media. I'm just here to coach basketball, right? And I talked to him over the phone for like half an hour. Completely different guy. I couldn't believe it. He was so nice. But the way to transition to that, so you've got some experiences with Byron Scott too, then, huh?
Yeah, I do, but I wanted to circle back for a quick Dr. J story since you brought him up.
Okay.
If you got him for 45 minutes, Ryan, you must have been asking him some damn good questions because, you said, these guys are usually like, looking at their watch. We're done with this thing soon.
And then a PR person chimes in like every 5 minutes. You got like 4 minutes. You got like 3 minutes. You know what I mean? But I learned my lesson. The first interview I ever did with a pro athlete was like one of the most intimidating things ever because it was a Father's Day thing, and I had to interview Eli Manning and Archie Manning at the same time over the phone. And I was nervous as hell. I even pounded a beer before I got on because I was so nervous.
Attaboy, Ryan.
Yeah, I kept telling my mom, I was like, I don't know, I can't stop thinking about being nervous. She's like, have a Corona. So I pounded a Corona
with the lime, jam that lime in there.
Oh yeah, and they told me I get 10 minutes again, right? So I, as like an idiot, I wrote out 10 questions thinking it was going to go minute by minute. I was done in 4.5 minutes, all those questions. After that, I learned have way more questions than you think you're actually going to ask because you never know where it's going to go, right?
Not only that, but listen to the answers, because a lot of I've done the same thing. A lot of times, the question you don't think of in advance turns out to be a great question because they
Right.
say something and you realize, oh, I think I can hook into this one a little bit. Let me bounce
Yeah.
something back, and then you get the good stuff.
Yeah, and then you just realize how much they've been, how long they've been around, how much they've experienced. People that you didn't know were connected to them, all of a sudden, that's a story. It's crazy, man. I interviewed Kareem too once, and that was a completely different experience. He was super nice to me. He was just very kind of calm and cool, and like just didn't want to give up much.
Yeah.
I remember he had one quote on Dwight at the time, because this is like, I think this is the tail end of Dwight being in LA, or maybe he was in Houston already. I can't remember. But I brought up Dwight and I was like, so did you work with him? He's like, yeah, but Dwight didn't want to work. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I got to dive into this a little bit, right?
See?
He's like, yeah. I went to the facility and he just didn't want to work. And he wouldn't elaborate on it. It was basically just like a shot at Dwight's work ethic, I think, right?
Yeah.
So and I put it on Instagram. I made a graphic out of it and everything. I feel bad, but I did tag Dwight. And Dwight, sure enough, responded. And he's like, "What are you doing, man? Why are you telling people this?" I'm like, "Don't kill him. Don't kill the messenger, dude. Go to the source.
Talk to the captain."
Yeah, that's Kareem that said that. I didn't say this. I'm relaying the message. That's my job. And he just kept coming at me. And I'm like, "Hey, look, if you really want to clear this up, let's jump on an interview right now. We'll talk about it." No.
We used to do a show on ESPN when I was there called NBA Coast to Coast. It was like we did it on Tuesday night. It was sort of a whip around show where we'd go from game to game, whatever. And I had this idea that on Kareem's 65th birthday, I wanted to have him on the phone as a guest. So I had to go through his representative, whose name is Deborah. I don't know if you know Deborah. You probably had to.
It's his wife, isn't it? Isn't it his wife that
maybe? I mean, it could be. I didn't realize that was the case, but Deborah was tough, man. I mean, she was a real good gatekeeper. So she asked me a million questions. What do you want to talk to him about? And it's like, honestly, it's kind of like a little love letter to Kareem, right? Because we're all on the show. All of the guys on the show on the set, admired him. And it's his 65th birthday. We just want to kind of wish him happy birthday, see how he's doing. So finally she said, okay. And he did it. And, and it was cool. But anyway, so last quick Dr. J story, and then we'll talk about Byron, because I know you want to talk about Byron. I love Byron. Byron is just super. So I was really good friends with Bill Walton, all right, because we worked together at ESPN. So one year, there were some NBA legends at the Hoop Hall of Fame in Springfield, which is, not far from my house. So I wanted to go up and shoot some sound for some features we were doing. So Bill was there, and Dr. J was there, and Casey Jones was there, and there was one or two other people. So I brought my son Adam with me, who is now in his 30s, but at the time he was like probably 12 or whatever, and he had a basketball. And I said, all right, Adam, bring your basketball, because I knew Bill would sign it, because Bill and I were friends. So Bill, signs the ball, and he's there. Wait a minute. Let me go get Dr. J to sign it. So Bill takes Adam and marches him over to Dr. J. Bill, Dr. J, this is Adam Bernstein. Adam, I work with his dad. He's like the greatest human being ever. Bill was always very over the top with that.
Yeah.
And Dr. J signs the ball. So I have the ball. Actually, I'll show it to you if you want to see it.
Yeah,
Dr. J and Bill Walton. Hang on.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Wow, Bill Walton takes up a whole
I didn't know
panel.
it was going to be show and tell today, but it just, see, that's what happens. You start out with something, and all of a sudden something else comes up. It's like we were talking about doing the interview, but I don't know what this is worth, but it doesn't matter, because
So is it just Bill and Dr. J?
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of hard to see with the reflection.
Well, I can see Bill's. Bill's is huge, but Dr. J's looks pretty big too. And he went Julius, huh?
Yeah. So Julius, Dr. J. Irvin. But anyway, so Byron Scott. love Byron Scott. Okay.
Yeah.
He, when I'm probably the first Celtics fan you've ever had on your show, which, maybe that's true, maybe not. But, before I started working with these guys, I'd always root against the Lakers. So when I'd root against him back in the 80s, I didn't know the guy, but then I started working with him. He is such a great dude. All right. You know this, right? He grew up in Inglewood in the shadow of the Forum. He was contemporaries with Darryl Strawberry and Eric Davis, who was a great, player for the Cincinnati Reds. I think he ended up on the Dodgers at one point.
Yeah, he did. I remember him.
And
yeah.
I mean, Byron at 6'3" was playing above the rim, but he was also a great three-point.
Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify is there to help you grow. Shopify helps you sell everywhere, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms, and sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. What I love about Shopify is how no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
Shooter. I mean, he led the league in three-point shooting, I think in 85 or whatever. He won 3 rings. They haven't retired his number, have they? Number 4?
No, because he's not in the Hall of Fame. I don't think so. No.
Okay. So all right. So you got to get in. All right. Well, I don't know. I think
that's a prerequisite. That's why Coop just got in. So, because he just got the Hall.
Got it. Okay. So anyway, he was on, 3 championship teams, and, he was a really good coach. He coached in the finals a couple times, lost to the Lakers once during that little mini dynasty in 2002, I think it was, when he was coaching the Nets. He also coached the Hornets. He was coach of the year. And after he finished up in Charlotte, he joined us in 2009. And again, like Kurt, and I'll talk about him, he was such a great analyst because the guys who played and coached gave you the absolute best insight because they could talk about it from, multiple perspectives. And I remember at the time, the dress code was a big thing. David Stern had instituted this dress code because a lot of guys were showing up looking kind of raggedy on the bench, and he wanted them to go.
Iverson was wearing all his gear and Stern threw the hammer down.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I asked him one time, about, because Byron used to look good, man. He had great suits, and he was, good looking.
Still does. The guy doesn't age. He looks exactly the same.
Absolutely. So I asked him one time, I said, what's the deal? How many suits do you own? He's there. Well, I'm not really sure how many I own, but I use 41 suits during the regular season. I'll never wear the same suit more than once at home and once on the road. So he actually would inventory, all right, I can wear this suit at home 41 times. I can wear it on the road 41 times because he never wanted to wear the same gear twice. And, I don't remember asking him, well, so how'd that work during the playoffs, right? I mean, if it were me, I would have had a couple of go-to suits, but I never, I should have had the presence of mind to ask him that, but I never did. But Byron was just great. I mean, even now, we're friendly on Facebook. Every so often we'll hit each other. And he's just great. And you're right, Ryan. That dude looks like he could still go out there and ball.
Yeah, he does. He hasn't gained any weight or anything. He looks in shape. Like he just does. The guy just doesn't age. And he's very active. He's always going on people's podcasts and doing shows and stuff. So
yeah, playing golf. I mean, he keeps himself up.
That's how I interviewed him, because he wrote a book with somebody. I can't remember who the other guy was, but it was more about financials, the financial side of things, and that's where we got talked. But then we went into a whole nother thing, about Kobe and Magic and all that stuff.
Yeah. Magic. I mean, damn. Magic is so freaking remarkable. I mean, when you were on our 48 Minutes podcast, our fellow Bleav podcast, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about that whole Anthony Edwards thing with Magic, where those two got into a little bit of beef. That was, and you were saying like, yeah, Magic just handled that so well. He said, I don't deal with guys who haven't won anything. And it was kind of like giving him one of these, and it was great.
Just shutting him down in a couple of words, and I was like, you couldn't have answered that question any better than that. That was perfect. And now Edwards is going to think twice whenever he says anything.
Yeah, I don't think he said much since then. I mean, I haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard anything. I bet his publicist and the PR for the Timberwolves are like, shut up. You're not doing yourself any favors or the team, right?
Magic just smacked you and sent you to your room. Now,
yeah. One quote I got from Byron talking about Magic is he said that when they were winning championships, or this is right before they won the first one, he said with Byron on the team, he said that Magic said when we win, or when we win, we all win. And he's like, but I didn't know what that meant until we won a championship, and then all of a sudden all these endorsements and everybody wanted a piece of you. And he said that's what he meant. He meant like you become a different marketable player. You know what I mean? You're on billboards, you're on commercials and all that stuff. I thought
you're a made man at that point, right? I mean, yeah, you're in the club forever.
Yeah, and Byron's an icon. He may not have a jersey up on the wall, but everybody knows who he is. I think a lot of this generation Lakers fans probably have a skewed view of him just because of his last coaching stint with the Lakers. It really didn't go well, but he wasn't given much at all to work with. It was as an old Kobe who was just trying to get to the end, and a bunch of young guys who hadn't developed yet. So I did feel for him, because I think it really frustrated him that they couldn't win. Because he was a great coach, as you said. I think a lot of people forget the coach of the year and him coaching Jason Kidd in New Jersey. He had a lot of great players. Before he became a head coach, he was an assistant coach in Indiana. And, Larry Brown was the head coach then. And Larry Brown's one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. And, Byron played for Riles, and he was an apprentice under Larry Brown. So by the time he got his chance, I mean, he was ready. He was ready to go. And, again, when you've been on a team with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson and James Worthy and Rambis and all those guys, I mean, your basketball IQ is up there. Yeah, it's through the roof. That's for sure. But you were saying Magic Johnson, so you got something with Magic, because he was part of ESPN for a while there too.
Yeah, well, I've got a few Magic Johnson stories, but the most incredible Magic Johnson story, I think, is, so we were at the 2008 finals working together. But that one didn't go well for the Lakers. Yeah. So we were working together, and we had like a booth in the TD Garden where our set was, and it was very, fans were literally like right outside this window, right? Because some of our seats were, how those boxes are. You have like a few seats in front of your box, but the rest of the crowd's right there. So Magic would be, in either in the booth looking out, or we might be sitting, with some of the other analysts. And the Boston fans were very respectful of him. Okay.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Because Magic Johnson is a god, right? He's a freaking god, right? Yeah. Even drunk Celtics fans can recognize that. And by the way, we have the drunkest fans in sports in Boston, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I've heard some tales about you.
I don't think it's even close, Ryan. But anyway, so Magic was so great. He'd be bantering with the fans, whatever. And at one of the games, I bought tickets for my wife and kids and brought them, and I brought them to meet Magic, right? Because I was able to get them into the booth to meet him. And, met my wife, Nancy, my sons, Mitchell and Adam, super nice. And that was that, right? So then like a year later, Magic was in Bristol, Connecticut, where ESPN is. And we're in the green room, and, my wife came to see me because I said, oh, Magic's here. Why don't you come say hello? He remembered her name without me even introducing him. He met her once the year before. When she came in, he just looks at her. He's there. Hey, Nancy, how are you? And I was stunned, right? I don't even think he remembered my name, but he remembered her name. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy is like on a completely different level than like other humans.
And you consider how much, he's a great businessman, obviously. So he's probably talking to people like on a daily, meeting new people daily, right? Not just, wherever he goes, everybody wants to meet him, but just, conversing with everyone. I struggle with names. The older I get, the more I'm terrible at it. And I'm like, I used to be really good at that. Now it's just not the same thing anymore. But those guys, that's incredible that he's got that kind of memory. But
I remember,
really cool.
I remember when the Lakers decided to hire Mike Brown as coach, and so Magic happened to be in Bristol that day. I was there, and I remember Mike Wilbon was doing an interview with Mike Brown on SportsCenter or whatever. And Magic was just, like the rest of us, we were all sort of shocked that they hired Mike Brown, even though Mike Brown's a damn good coach. He's actually a very good friend of mine. We worked together for a while too, and he's done our podcasts and stuff. Great, great man. So I remember asking Magic, because that was like during the Jimmy Buss time when Jimmy was, I think Dr. Buss had given Jimmy certain responsibilities, and Jimmy was like, one of the, I guess, had personnel responsibilities. So I asked Magic, because we're looking at each other. I said, Magic, who gives Jimmy advice on these things? And he just kind of looked at me and says, I don't know. I guess that was kind of a Jimmy hire. And Mike had a pretty good record there, but the bar is set so high in LA that, you can have a pretty good record in LA and it's garbage in LA. It's kind of the same in Boston.
That's why right now with JJ, he's getting all the grief, right? Because I've never seen somebody get hired with zero coaching experience at all, right? Let alone
Steve Nash would be the last guy, but
at least he had the resume, right? I'm not saying JJ didn't basketball wise, but 2-time MVP Steve Nash, right? Like that's it's a little higher up there, right? Like you figure his IQ is just through the roof. And I think he was more personable with players, whereas JJ seems a little bit more edgy, a little bit more opinionated, right?
Yeah, but he's LeBron's guy. So, that kind of shields him, I think. It's going to give him a little bit longer honeymoon maybe than some other guys might have in that situation.
Well, for now, until that tide starts turning, right? And then all of a sudden LeBron's like, I don't know. Maybe we should get rid of this guy.
You were, I was, because I'm kind of an old timer, I wanted to talk a little bit about Kurt Rambis. And, because Kurt, I think, unfairly gets a lot of heat from some of the fans in LA.
Yeah.
That guy, and again, I can understand why, but you're not going to find too many people that are smarter than Kurt Rambis. I was actually at the game in 1984 at the finals when McHale clotheslined him. And
we talked about that, huh?
Yeah, we talked about that on 48 Minutes a few weeks ago. So that was really my first visit to a basketball game in LA. We were there for games 3 and 4 of the finals that year. Game 3, the Lakers absolutely smoked Boston. They beat them by like 20 points. Larry Bird called out the team, called them a bunch of sissies because they were down 2-1 with game 4 in LA, right? And they were pretty much, on the brink. If they lost game 4 in LA, they were going to lose that series, right? So McHale, so Bird challenged the team, and McHale was not really a rough player. He was more kind of like, a Gumby type guy with all of his moves, and he didn't really clobber guys like that. But I guess
Gumby's a good comparison. I can see that.
Yeah, he's kind of like Rubber Man, he's like here or there and everywhere with all this crazy moves underneath, whatever. So I don't think he really knew how to play physical, but I think he knew at some point he had to be physical, but he kind of did it wrong. And he closed like Kurt. Could you imagine if somebody pulled that crap today?
They'd be suspended for half this. It'd be like Malice in the Palace type type
Yeah.
suspension, right? Yeah.
Exactly. That would be a 20-game suspension.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe more, because he could have really, really hurt Kurt
Yeah.
badly.
Totally. Yeah.
But Kurt was a massive human being. Okay, he wasn't the tallest guy, but he was probably one of the best athletes on that team because he was strong, man. He was super strong. And it's funny, we used to talk about a lot of basketball things, and one of the things he told me that he actually worked on when he was a player was, how the Lakers, they always wanted to run back in those days, run, showtime, get it out. But, whereas most teams couldn't really start a fast break unless the other team missed, you got a rebound and pushed it, or maybe there was a live ball turnover and you started to push it. Kurt told me that, Riles had him drill on a made basket by the other team. Kurt said, my skill was getting that ball out of the basket so quick, getting on 1 foot out of bounds and letting it fly to Magic, who was already flying up the court. So that was one of the keys to their fast break. They could run even after a made basket, whereas most teams couldn't. And Kurt said that was a very premeditated thing that we used to work on all the time. And I was always the guy who would try and get the ball out of the basket and, fire that ball, because Magic would just take off running as soon as the ball went in. And Kurt, would get the ball out to him, and boom, they're running off of made hoops. And that was a knack that he learned. And, as an analyst, man, I used to love working with Kurt because I was the coordinating producer for the show. So I was overseeing the whole show. I'd have a producer and I'd have my talent and all that.
Yeah.
Kurt was great, much like when I was talking about Byron a few minutes ago, because he had been a player and a head coach. He could break down video showing why a guy was out of position on a play, but he could also explain some of the locker room chemistry stuff, why certain guys were great locker room leaders, or they might have been, negative forces, whatever. And just the nicest, coolest guy ever. I last saw him and Linda, his wife, who I'm also friendly with, a little over a year ago. I had produced some playoff games for ESPN radio. So I had a chance to go visit with those guys. And, Linda introduced me to Jeannie, and, we did stuff with Jeannie over the years. And Jeannie is just, I know you mentioned when we did our show that, she's been getting a lot of heat lately, from the fans. Mm-hmm. She is such a lovely, warm person. She really is. Lay off of Jeannie, Laker Nation. Come on, man. She's one of the good guys, and that's not a lie.
Yeah, the only experience I ever had with her was I don't know if I said it on your show, where I was in the elevator with her and Phil Jackson.
Yeah, he wasn't too happy to see you.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be there at all, and Phil Jackson's giving me the stink eye, but she was just the nicest person. She's probably the nicest person I've ever met in this crazy business, right? Like there's no reason for her to even acknowledge me and the other guy, Bob, that I was with. And she was just all about us. She was just like, how are you doing? You guys gonna come up, go party with us and stuff. I'm like, God, I wish I could go do that. But it's just a matter of time before you see the badge says media and not, yes.
Let me hide this thing. Let me tuck it in here.
Oh, yeah. And Phil just knows the whole time, just like a giant looking down on this little guy. And I was like, oh my God. But yeah, I had an experience with Kurt Rambis once. I was covering an event, wasn't that long ago. I think it was like Frank Vogel's first year. And they had this partnership with a credit union or something, or some entertainment credit union or something like that. And they went all out. Like we got free drinks all night, free everything. It was really fun. And everybody's mingling, right? Players, everything. And we got some time with Kurt, James Worthy, and Robert Horry. And we went down to like the bowels of this place in the middle of downtown LA. And all of us have drinks in our hands, and we're all half hammered. And I'm interviewing all of them. I got questions for all of them, and they were all super nice. And Kurt seemed like such a pleasant guy to be around, right? Him and James Worthy and Horry too, but Kurt more so because he was talking more than anybody, right? And I think I asked him about the clothesline thing and a lot of different things. but my memory's fuzzy about that night. So I'm glad I got it recorded. It's recorded somewhere, but yeah, he was. That's the memory I have of him. We were literally there's like, I think like 6 of us total downstairs in this random place, all with drinks in our hands, and
he's such a chill guy, man. He is totally chill. And,
he looked like a cool guy to hang out with, like, just to shoot the, I was gonna say I can't cuss anymore, right? Like I got a bad mouth, but yeah, he just seemed like a cool guy to have a conversation with and talk basketball.
You know what's funny? So that his wife Linda is like best friends with Jeannie, right?
Yeah,
they're like, for you're probably too young to remember the show I Love Lucy unless you saw it on reruns. But there was Lucy
I remember
and
as
Ethel.
a kid, like Channel 5, like all day long. Yeah.
So Lucy and Ethel Mertz were like the besties, right? So Linda and Jeannie are like Lucy and Ethel. Did you know that Linda was with the Lakers before Kurt was with the Lakers? She was there first because if you watch the Winning Time show, which I'm sure you did on HBO, there's some depictions of Linda, and Jeannie, back when Linda, her maiden name, she went under her maiden name back then, but she was actually a part of the Lakers organization before Kurt was.
And that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and she's, she introduced me to Jeannie when, because when I would be in LA, I would go up to their old offices in El Segundo. I know their new offices are also in El Segundo, but I'd go up in the old office. And I remember, Linda introduced me to Jeannie, and I walked by Jeannie's office and she had all these like Larry O'Brien trophies just lined up on like a credenza because she had a window where she could look down on the practice court.
They purposely do that, like just to show you, just how successful the team is or whatever. Like I think
she was.
The new practice facilities like that too. Those two buildings are like so different from one another. One is very dated and very kind of like rec gym kind of type feel to it. Right. And this new one's like state of the art. Everything's beautiful and flawless.
One of these days, I'd love to get out there and see. I don't really go to LA very much, but
so worth the trip. I covered a lot of practices there, and every time I'm always like, oh my god, this place is so beautiful. So nice.
Jeannie, when we used to do the Mike Wise show on my old company called Pure Hoops Media, Mike and Jeannie were very good friends. So she did our podcast a couple times. And again, if any of your, Laker Nation listeners ever wanted to check these out, I mean, they're all on Apple Podcasts. So, I can send you info if you wanted to share it with them on where to find it. Because Jeannie was just so, I mean, she did like an hour and then another hour, a few years apart. Her last one was right after the Lakers won their last chip. And she was so happy. And we were talking about LeBron back then. Again, I know there are Laker fans and there are LeBron fans, but at the time, I think every Laker fan was a LeBron fan because they had just won the championship.
Yeah.
And Mike Astor said, Jeannie, is LeBron going to get a statue? And the answer was yes. So at some point, even though LeBron won't have played most of his career there, we know he's going to the Hall of Fame, obviously. There will be a LeBron James statue at some point, and that'll be interesting to see. But he's going to probably play till he's like 50, so it's going to be a while before we see that.
Who knows with that guy, man? I think I said on your podcast, I wouldn't be surprised if this is his last year.
You did say that.
Yeah,
you did.
It feels like it's lining up that way for some reason. Like he just set it up to where he's like kind of gauging where this season's going to go. And if he didn't like it, or if he could see the end, he'll just say, hey, look, I'm done. But like I said, I would think if he's going to do it, he wants that farewell tour. So it would be media day would be when it happens, or the first day of the season or whatever, like the preseason or whatever. So this season's crazy, man. I mean, I know you've seen a lot of seasons as well, but I've never seen anything like this. It's very strange and surreal, and I don't really understand it completely, all the moves they made. And
well, I mean, look, it's going to be a tough season for those guys. I mean, I've got them finishing with 43 wins, all right, which is probably puts them in the play-in tournament. I'm concerned about health for those guys. Look, LeBron has been very durable over the course of his career, although in the last few years he's gotten hurt a little bit. Anthony Davis, we talked about it on 48 Minutes when you were on. He played 76 games last year, which is like the most he's ever played in a season. But, I think you and I both said, gee, is he going to be able to do that again?
Right.
Because we don't know. So if they're healthy and, they get some contributions, Austin Reeves is nice, a nice player. And, I think Gabe Vincent will help, having a little bit of depth there. D'Angelo Russell, who even knows? They'd love to get rid of that guy if they could get anything of value for him. But that's a tough contract to move, I think. And plus, D'Lo.
I think they would have moved it already if it was that easy to move.
Yeah. So I got them winning 43 and I think finishing 9th in the standing. So that puts them in the play-in. We'll see what happens, but it's tough times for Laker fans right now. I know you guys are used to being, at or near the top, and it's good for the league when the Lakers are at or near the top, just like it's good for the league when the Knicks and the Celtics and the Sixers are all up there near the top.
Totally agree.
And those other 3 teams, I think, are all 50-plus win teams this year. Boston, I think, 60. The Knicks and Sixers, up there. So I don't know. I'm not a Lakers hater. I swear to God, I'm not. I think
I can tell
you guys can tell. I have an appreciation for the franchise and for many of the people that were there. So I hope that they will overachieve because I would love to see them make a nice run. I am a huge LeBron fan. I think LeBron's the greatest all-around player ever. And I know I'm in a minority there. Everyone else will say Michael Jordan. Maybe a handful of people will say Kareem or whatever. All things considered, I'm a LeBron guy. He's never been on a team that I root for, but I couldn't admire him anymore.
There's one, I can't remember who said it, but I thought it was pretty well put, saying that because I think Jordan's the best I've ever seen, and I don't even really think it's close. But somebody said Jordan's the best player. LeBron had the best career ever, right? And I think that's pretty on the nose.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? He doesn't have the rings and the individual accolades, I guess, that Jordan does, but the longevity is just ridiculous. It's like Brady doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Like, how have you not broken down at this point? But and just coming into a season where he's going to turn 40 in a couple of months. Yeah. And he's still going at this level in a game that's so demanding on your body. It's just crazy.
Look how he dominated the Olympics. He was the MVP of the Olympics, Well,
I think the thing is with that situation, which I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to, is he's playing on an all-star team, right? So he doesn't have to do damn near everything. He just has to do what he does best, right? Distributing, scoring in key moments. And I think you saw that a little bit from all those guys. Steph, all of a sudden in the end, just exploded after not playing great in the beginning. AD playing really well. Just all those guys. Kevin Durant had his moments. But that's the kind of game I want to see in the All-Star game every year.
Yeah.
That
defense.
kind of competitiveness. Well, that's what it looks like when it's right, when all those guys are clicking. Imagine how entertaining that would be every year.
The All-Star game is such a joke now.
It's a total joke.
It's a joke.
I don't even watch it anymore. I can't watch it. It's like an eyesore. 200 points,
last year there was 400 points scored in the game, right? And I think there was a total of 3 free throws taken in the whole game because nobody was guarding anybody, which meant nobody fouled anybody. Yeah. It was unwatchable. Look, watching, Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry shoot threes was way more entertaining.
Yeah. And I hope they do that again. I hope they get Caitlin Clark involved somehow. That'd be awesome.
That would be incredible. I think, again, I'm sure they're going to ask her. Question is going to be, does she want to? I think it would be great.
She might. She's a competitor. She might take the challenge. I hope she does.
I think I'm not positive about this. Is the All-Star game in Indianapolis this year, or was it there last year? I can't remember. Maybe it was there last year.
It might have been. Honestly, I didn't even pay attention to it outside of that shooting contest and the dunk contest, which was awful. Even even your boy Jaylen Brown couldn't really do anything. I was just
No,
like,
it was. I mean, the best thing he did was the Michael Jackson glove, and that didn't work out too well.
I hate these little props that they bring out. It's like, just dunk, dude. Just do some crazy thing that we've never seen before. You don't bring props on it. It's not a show like that, you know.
There's just such expectations. Oh, what are they going to do? You know, I think, Blake Griffin started a lot of it when he jumped over that car about 10 years ago when he was doing that.
Baron Davis throwing the ball up. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dwight Howard with the Superman cape and all that stuff. I mean, it's like, whatever. I mean, to me, the dunk contest, I agree. It's kind of boring. I love the 3-point shootout.
I do too.
That's the best. It's the best thing of the whole weekend.
Because those guys really want to win, right? They are really competitive. They know that it's the distinction of being like one of the best shooters in the league. And
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to jack up like 25 shots in 60 seconds.
Right. Or like, your guy, Larry Bird, I saw some highlights of his 3-point shooting. But what is that famous quote where he comes into the locker room and he said, okay, well, who's going to finish second? Right. I love that.
That's such a Larry Bird thing.
I wish more players had that kind of edge to them. You know what I mean? They're willing to talk crap and stir the pot a little bit. And it's just everybody's so safe nowadays. They don't want to ruffle feathers. And then there's Anthony Edwards that, just kind of says crazy stuff now.
And then on Larry Bird's last shot, he lets it go and he just kind of does
this.
Yeah.
And he starts walking away,
ball's
right?
just out of his hand. He knows it's in.
Yeah.
And it was
that's
just
that's like Steph before Steph, doing the turnaround thing and running down the other side. Yeah. That was cool to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, look, I hope Bronny, gets a chance to develop a little bit, and that you guys don't crush him too bad if he starts out a little slow out of the gate. It'll be cool.
That's coming. That's coming, man.
I know. You predicted that. You said as soon as the first guy blows by him, or he jacks up an air ball.
Oh yeah, he goes 0 for 5 or something. Oh, it's just gonna be brutal. It's just gonna be brutal. I mean, when it gets bad like this, people just pile on. You know what I mean? Anything negative is just like, pile on, and that's the reason why. You know what I mean?
I just hope that he doesn't get blame if the team's not good. Oh, they're so crappy. I mean, because they got Bronny on the team. It's not going to be because of Bronny.
I think the only way that would happen is if he gets way more playing time than he should, right?
Yeah.
Like if he's playing over Max Christie or Austin Reeves or something like that, then I get it. That would make sense. And then you just know that the wheels are completely off this thing, right? Like it makes no sense what's going on. Because I like the kid. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders, right? He's not saying stupid, crazy things. He's keeping quiet. I don't think it's his personality to really say a lot, right? And I think he's a great defender. I think he has a chance to be a good defender. It's just that shot. He's got to knock down shots or else he won't be able to stay on the floor. It's like how they say, the other way around. You could shoot, but you can't defend, so you can't stay on the floor. You got to have both. You can't. You have to be 3 and D, or you're not on the floor. So, and I think that's an easier skill to develop, shooting rather than defense. Defense is more instinctual, right? It's more fundamentally based. And if you don't have it in the beginning, sometimes you'll never have it, right? But if, like I said on your podcast, I think if he goes in the way of Jason Kidd, right? Like Jason Kidd was able to hone his shot later in his career, and he became one of the best shooters in the league at the time, right? After being
Gary Payton used to make fun of him. He used to call him Asen. He's there because he doesn't have a J.
I've never heard that before.
Oh yeah,
that sounds a lot like Payton. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, he couldn't, he couldn't shoot at all, but he wanted to be good and he wanted to be great, and he ended up, I think, maybe even leading the league one year in 3-point percentage. I'm not 100% sure about that, but he was a threat, and
yeah.
So I hope, look, with Bronny, I think he's got the work ethic. Yeah. And once he gets a couple games with the GOAT, because he can't call him dad, he's got to call him the GOAT. Once he gets a couple games on the court with the GOAT, and they can kind of market the crap out of that, as we discussed, a few weeks ago, go down to the G League and learn to play. Learn to do the things that you don't, because they'll give him all the minutes he wants down there, because they don't really care about winning. That's all about developing players.
And once down there, they'll probably get more exposure for the South Bay Lakers than ever before. right?
They'll sell a lot of tickets to see Bronny.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I'll watch those games just to see, how he does. There's a couple times in the past where I watched, but not something that intriguing, right? Not that much of a draw. And I think that's the good. Yeah, like we said, they're gonna milk the crap out of this whole thing, one way or the other.
As
right?
they should.
Yeah.
I mean, they pay that dude a lot of money to
Mm-hmm.
not really having proven himself. So sell some tickets at South Bay, some of those games will probably end up on NBA TV. So that'll hopefully mean some more, exposure and revenue, right. For to help kind of, offset what they're paying him or come up with the revenue to pay him, whatever.
Well,
Not that should be a problem.
Adam Silver's probably happy, that's for sure. He's like, oh, this kid, we could just market him, and then everybody starts watching the G League all of a sudden,
Yeah, I mean, because the G League's a tough watch. I mean, I've tried watching some G League games, and again, some the Celtics affiliate is up in Maine. I think they're called the Maine Claws or Lobster Claws or something. I don't know what. And I've tried watching some of those. It's like watching a high school game on local cable because the gyms are small.
Right.
You could see after the basket. You take 3 more steps, you're out in the hallway.
Right. It reminds me of Summer League.
Yeah.
Same kind of basketball played in Summer League. Just very kind of sloppy, and certain guys shine and certain guys don't. Or like there's guys that drop 30 and they can't drop, 5 in an NBA game. It's just.
Yeah, and some of the gyms, they have like those random like markings on the floor, like for like the volleyball court or something, or, I mean, not all of them do. Most of them are pretty professional looking, but G League's a tough watch. But you know what? I'll watch Bronny play in a G League game, or at least a half. I won't watch the whole game, but
right. You'll give him a shot. Yeah,
I think check it out.
It's a lot of people probably thinking the same way right now, especially Lakers fans.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get you out of here on that, Bruce. Is there anything else you wanted to go over?
Well, I would just ask those of the Jello jiggling crowd, if you're interested in a podcast that kind of covers the entire league. Our show is called 48 Minutes on the Bleav Network. We usually a new one drops after midnight on Monday nights most weeks. My co-hosts are Ross Geiger, who just came back from Greece. He was at Giannis Antetokounmpo's wedding because Ross and Giannis are like good friends. Ross used to work for the Bucks and the Knicks and also the Phoenix Suns. And our other co-host is Michael Worldby Freer, who's like a statistical guru. So we've got a coach, we've got a numbers guy, and we've got me, whatever my thing is. But we do a lot of fun stuff. Our show this week, we went through the entire Eastern Conference team by team and did over-under on wins. So if you're looking at maybe trying to place some bets going into the season, want to get some perspective on who's going under their number, who's going over, who's under, whatever. We've got that. And next week, our plan is to do the Western Conference. So that might play in more to the Jello jiggling crowd, since you're probably primarily Western Conference peeps. But we'd love it if some of your listeners would check us out. We appreciate you, Ryan. We appreciated you being on a few weeks ago. We had a blast with you. Hopefully we can do that again. And thank you for inviting me on. This was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, man, we got to do this more often. And then if, when the Lakers play the Boston, maybe we do a show before or after, or, whatever you want to do. That'd be great. Well,
you know what? Sometimes I go to see the Lakers when they're in Boston. I'm not sure where the schedule, falls for them this year. But anytime, because I follow the Lakers pretty closely too. So if you ever want to just have someone from the enemy camp, that's in quotes, all right, to kind of give you like the East Coast perspective on what's going on around the league. I'm always here for you, Ryan. I appreciate you, and you do a great job on your show, and thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. No problem, man. Anytime. Well, right. Thanks for coming, man.
Take care.
All right.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.